haunting whispers in Italian. "Don't sign this." And the billionaire shook forever. The grand hall was alive with an otherworldly tension. High above, the glittering chandelier trembled, casting ghostly shadows that danced across the marble floor. People whispered, their voices a blend of admiration and fear as the richest man in the world stood at the center of it all, his face pale, his hands trembling. Just moments ago, he had received a mysterious scroll, its surface adorned with cryptic symbols and eerie writing that seemed to shift when one glanced at it. The air thickened. A shiver ran down spines around the room. What could it mean? The guests, wealthy and influential, looked on wide-eyed, their hearts racing. The billionaire's eyes flitted nervously from the scroll to his advisors, who exchanged anxious glances. What secret knowledge lay within those words? The faint sound of Italian whispered his name, a chilling resonance that echoed against the stone walls. Non firmar questo. It felt like a warning from the beyond, an irresistible call brushing against the edges of reality where shadows lingered. Was this truly a curse? Or a mere trick designed to sow chaos? And yet, the fine hairs on the back of one's neck stood at a sharp attention. There was something undeniably sinister about the atmosphere. The silence was palpable, the only sound his labored breaths, each one steeped in trepidation. The room felt heavy with the weight of unspoken truths, and the eyes of 100 people bore into him, awaiting his next move. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. His heart thudded like a frantic drum as he slowly unrolled the scroll, each crackle piercing the silence like a scream in the dead of night. The ink twisted and slithered, forming sinister shapes that suggested danger. What would happen if he ignored it? What doom awaited him? An unsettling dread spread through the crowd, faces pallid, eyes wide, drowning under the weight of uncertainty. Discussions murmured around him, questions tinged with horror. Is this the end for him? What haunted secrets lurk in the shadows of his empire? Something suddenly flickered across the parchment, a shimmer like a warning sign, and gasps escaped from the lips of those closest. The billionaire's grip tightened, the scroll almost slipping from his fingers. Every instinct screamed at him to stop, but he had never been one to back down. As he inhaled deeply, he felt a rush of heat, the kind that ignites in moments of fear. Would the next sound he made be a shriek of realization? But before he could make a decision, the power flickered, dimming the lights. Gasps erupted, and in that fleeting darkness, a voice whispered from the shadows, "Don't sign this." What had he just stepped into? And would he ever escape it? The lights flickered back on, illuminating the billionaire's face, now a mask of pale determination. The crowd's whispers morphed into a collective murmur of anxiety. They were expecting a spectacle, and now they had an enigma. What had once been an extravagant gala had transformed into a theater of terror. The bead of sweat trickled down the billionaire's temple as he stared at the scroll, determination wrestling with fear. The language whispered to him was not just a warning. It bore the weight of urgency. His mind raced. What would happen if he didn't sign? Would he lose everything? Could this curse be real? The room was electric with anticipation, 100 heartbeats synchronized in trepidation. "Please, don't even think of it." One of his closest advisors gasped, gripping the back of his arm like a lifeline. The fear in her voice was palpable, and her eyes glimmered with unspoken truths. The guests, too, seemed to sense the gravity of the moment, their breaths collectively hitching. What if it's a trap? Someone suggested from the crowd, a low voice laced with disbelief. Who sent this? Questions raced through the room like wildfire. The air thickened with speculation, each theory more outrageous than the last. Someone suggested it was an elaborate prank. Others insisted it was a warning from the underworld. Just then, the scroll pulsed with a strange energy, as if it had a heartbeat of its own. He felt a twist in his gut, an instinct clawing at him. The symbols glowed faintly, sending shivers skittering across his skin. He felt trapped, a marionette on strings he couldn't see. Suddenly, a figure stepped forward, a shadow among the wealthy luminaries. It was a woman, draped in red, her presence commanding the floor. "You must heed the warning," she said, her voice sharp like glass. The crowd fell silent, riveted by her intensity. "There are consequences far greater than you understand." "What do you know?" the billionaire demanded, his voice strained yet steady. Her olive eyes bore into his, as if scanning his very soul. "This isn't merely about your wealth. It's about your legacy, your very essence. If you sign, you tether yourself to something dark. If you don't, something far worse may follow." Chill crept through the room, clashing against the heat of uncertainty. The chandelier above them rattled, a faint echo of something displeased lurking just outside their perception. The mystery of the scroll, now a powder keg of impending disaster, ignited tension in their hearts. What more could happen? He spat, searching for strength amidst the encroaching darkness. "I'm the richest man alive." The woman's expression softened, just a fraction, enough for him to see the fear behind her courage. "Wealth means little if your soul is lost in the bargain." It dawned on him then, in a fragmented flash of vision of his life unraveling, the empire built on ambition collapsing into haunted whispers. He felt a knot in his throat, choking the bravado he desperately clung to. The crowd, still buzzing, couldn't bear the silence any longer. Gossip flowed like a river, cascading wild theories and haunting comments. Were they all complicit in some unspeakable accord that bound them to this moment? As the tension reached a fever pitch, the power surged again, a sudden violence that made the lights hum angrily. The scroll surged with energy, wrapping around his fingers as if it sought to pull him closer. His breathing quickened, adrenaline coursing through his veins. Would the scroll bind him to darkness? Or was it his only savior from a more sinister fate? In that pregnant moment, the choice loomed before him, heavy like a weight on his chest. And as he stared into the abyss of consequences, he knew one decision could change everything. What awaited on the other side of that fateful signature? What darkness lingered beyond the threshold? Driven by instinct, he prepared to make his choice, earth-shattering in its implications. The air crackled around him, an electric anxiety as if the very walls were leaning in, desperate to hear his decision. He was acutely aware of every gaze fixed on him, curiosity morphing into something darker, something almost predatory. As his fingers brushed the ancient scroll, a sudden image flashed in his mind. Cold, dark water, slowly rising to envelop everything he held dear. The faces of his loved ones twisted in anguish, rippling through his conscience as if warning him from a distance. "No," he muttered, pulling his hand back as dread settled like a curtain of lead weight in his gut. He locked eyes with the woman in red, her expression a mixture of resolve and sorrow. She stepped closer, the intensity of her presence a stillness in the storm that raged around them. "You cannot allow fear to dictate your actions," she implored. "Sometimes the greatest risk is in doing nothing at all." Her voice rang out, steady and imploring. The crowd erupted with buzz, opinions clashing wildly. "Why should we trust you?" someone yelled from the back. "You could be part of the trick." The woman turned to face them, her eyes shimmering with defiance. "What is more terrifying? The potential of dark forces, or standing idly while unknown dangers unfold?" The billionaire's heart raced. How could he weigh the potential consequences of signing against the shadow that lurked just beyond their collective understanding? The weight of ambition collided with the chilling reality he faced. Who had set this in motion? What powers played their hand in his fate? "Tell me what will happen if I don't sign," he demanded, desperation clawing at his throat. The woman's lips curled into a grim smile, as if she had been waiting for this question. "A void will be created, a vacuum for chaos to seep in. You may not lose your wealth, but your legacy will tumble down in silence, unsung and forgotten. Those you cherish will turn their backs, never to return. The lights you bask in will dim, leaving only shadows behind." Gasps erupted from the crowd. The chandelier flickered again, the room holding its breath as the implications hung heavy in the air. "And what if I do sign?" "Then you embrace darkness, but harness it for a time." Her eyes bore into his. "You gain power, but at an ever-increasing cost. You'll hold dominion, but your soul, it will slip away grain by grain." An icy tendril of fear coiled around him, freezing him in place. They all surrounded him, wealthy and powerful, but deep inside, he felt vulnerable, like a moth drawn to flame. Choose, she urged, voice echoing in the deafening silence. This decision will define your legacy. You have mere moments. Time slowed. He could hear his heart thudding in his ears, the whispers of doubt swirling around. Failure? Panic? Loss. But before he could ponder any further, the scroll pulsed again, its energy swirling like a tempest demanding his attention. His fingers tingled at its touch, and a thought ignited within him, a possibility. Maybe, just maybe, this could lead to something greater. He caught a glimpse of fear in his advisor's eyes, and yet the lure of power was intoxicating. What would it be like to truly command respect, to bend the very fabric of his destiny? From the back of the throng, whispers grew louder, merging into a cacophony of doubt. He is going to sign. He can't resist. A murmur ran through the crowd, sheer anticipation wrapped in disbelief. Beneath the weight of centuries-old parchment and spectral shadows, he exhaled slowly. The choice loomed as he raised the quill, adrenaline surging through him and teetered on the edge of change. But just as he was about to make contact with the scroll, a sound broke the silence, a sharp crack, like thunder. The lights flickered, and then blackness swallowed them whole. What had they invoked? In that moment of desperation, what unseen consequences lurked just beyond the reach of his decision? A profound silence shattered the moment, echoing in the dark as if the universe itself held its breath. The billionaire's heart raced, panic clawing at his throat. He fumbled blindly in the void, desperately seeking the rest of the crowd. But the faces he had once perceived in eager anticipation were now mere shadows, indistinguishable in the inky blackness. Then, a haunting whisper crept through the stillness. You shouldn't have come here. It was a voice he didn't recognize, yet something about it sent a shiver down his spine. The words hung in the air like an ominous fog, wrapping around him and drawing him deeper into the dread of uncertainty. Is anyone there? He called out, his voice trembling. It sounded small, swallowed by the abyss. He could almost hear the walls mocking him, feeling the weight of unseen eyes boring into him from the darkness. Larissa, the woman in red, broke through the silence. Stay calm. We need to focus. Light flickered back in, illuminating stark faces contorted with fear and surprise. The chandelier once again thrummed with energy as a single bulb ignited, revealing their surroundings. Walls dripped with dampness, and a chill swept through the hall. The air felt charged, electric with the tension of unspoken fears. Did anyone see what happened? A man stammered, glancing around as if the shadows themselves were plotting against him. The scroll, it reacted, Larissa said, urgency threading her tone. There was a shift in balance. He felt the scroll still pulsing, an undeniable weight, a heartbeat thrumming against the palms of his hands. He had to lock this away, to forget the intoxicating thoughts of power and control. But something inside him stirred, a flicker of allure and temptation that begged him to succumb. What was that voice? The billionaire's voice broke through, bold and searching as fear melded with confusion. What does it mean? What balance? Yes. The crowd surged forward, eyes wide, swallowing every word she would impart. Tell us what we unleashed. They pressed, voices rising like a collective wave of anxiety. Larissa straightened, her expression stony, but her eyes betrayed her. A shimmer of fear lay beneath her composed facade. That was a warning, a sign of what is to come. We've tapped into something deep, something ancient. The choice you face now is beyond comprehension. But what choice? I didn't sign. He protested, growing frantic, grabbing at the fabric of reality that seemed to unravel before him. You were about to, she reminded him, glancing at the scroll in his hand. What you choose now could very well determine the fate of us all. A jolt of realization struck him. This was never just about me. It's about all of us. The chaos of emotions swirled: fear, guilt, anger. They all had a part in this unfolding nightmare. Before he could gather his thoughts, a chilling voice echoed once more, this time loud and resonant, cutting through the uncertainty. Choose wisely, for each decision leads you deeper into the abyss. Panic surged through him. The air felt heavier, and the crowd waited with bated breath. What does that even mean? He shouted back into the surrounding darkness. What abyss? The ground beneath him trembled, a low rumble resonating through the hall. Figures shifted in the corners of his vision, shadows morphing, whispering elusive threats. A flicker of doubt crept back in, wrapping its tendrils around his resolve. He felt like a man at the edge of a precipice, peering into an unknown abyss below. Choose. Larissa urged again, her voice urgent and steady. Darkness or light? Power or sacrifice? Each syllable rang in his head like a tolling bell, pressing him closer to a decision that could reshape more than just his own destiny. As the atmosphere thickened and fear seemed to crackle in the air around him, he felt the unmistakable weight of expectation. The crowd's collective eyes bore down, each gaze a knife, slicing through his resolve. How far would he go to grasp power? Just as he opened his mouth to respond, a deafening crash echoed from the far end of the hall. A door, hidden entrance had flung open. An ominous figure silhouetted within it appeared, drenched in shadow, and laughter, a chilling, sinister sound drifted through the air, setting his teeth on edge. What is this? The voice was rich and dark like treacle, curling around them. A party without me? And in that moment, he realized the stakes had just escalated beyond his imagination. What lay ahead was not just a crossing of paths. It was a confrontation with chaos itself. What had he truly invited into their lives? The unbearable weight of his choice loomed. Would he muster the strength to confront it? The figure stepped forward, breaking the threshold of darkness with a sliver of light. A glint of polished shoes caught the dim chandelier-esque glow, and a sneer curled the lips of that shadow. The billionaire felt his chest tighten, the air around them crackled with a menacing energy, thick enough to slice through with a knife. Who are you? He managed to stammer, his voice barely audible. The figure chuckled, a sound like gravel crunching beneath a boot. Answers aren't given freely here, dear friend. But I have something infinitely more valuable. A long, flowing cloak billowed like smoke behind the stranger, framing a face that was obscured, save for two piercing eyes that glimmered with a malevolent light. The room tensed as whispers echoed through the crowd, uncertainty mingling with fear. What do you want? Larissa's tone was sharp, authoritative. State your intentions. Ah, the gallant warrior, the figure mused, easing closer. You stand on the precipice of an unveiling. But your companion here, he gestured at the billionaire, is still playing in the shallow end. The billionaire clenched his fists, battling a mix of fury and fear. Stop toying with us. What do you want? With a flourish, the figure produced an ornate box, its surface etched with ancient symbols that glowed faintly. The scroll in the billionaire's grasp pulsed in response, as if sensing a rival. This, he said, reverently lifting the box, is a key to a world far beyond your comprehension. A bargain awaits. Darkness seemed to swirl around the stranger, beckoning with whispered secrets, promising power beyond imagination. The billionaire felt his heart race. What did he have to lose? But that tiny voice of fear throbbed louder. Was this what he really wanted? Don't you see? Larissa's voice sliced through his indecision. It's all a trap. He's trying to manipulate you. The figure chuckled again, delight dancing in his unsettling eyes. Oh, but she's wrong. I bring options, my dear billionaire. You can either accept my offer, he leaned closer, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper, or remain a pawn in a game you cannot hope to understand. The crowd shifted nervously, eyes darting between the box, Larissa, and the brooding figure. Anger built inside him as a shudder ran down his spine. What kind of bargain are you offering? Power, he purred, beyond your imagination. Influence, wealth, all at your fingertips. Simply sign your name. The crowd gasped collectively as the figure produced a long quill, seemingly crafted from obsidian, and gestured to a blank space on the box's lid. The air turned frigid, the unmistakable scent of brimstone wafting in. The billionaire's pulse raced. If he signed, he'd be sealing their fate. You're asking me to throw away my soul. Small price, really, the figure smiled, revealing teeth that glinted unnaturally sharp. A small sacrifice for something great. Besides, your soul isn't needed where we're headed. Just a name on a piece of parchment will do. As fear wrestled with temptation, a startling sound pierced the tension, a low, guttural growl emanating from the darkness behind the figure. The very shadows seemed to quake, whispering warnings of their own. What's that? Someone from the crowd yelled, retreating a step. The malevolent figure snapped his head back, eyes narrowing. Ah, we're not alone out of the shadows. Forms began to emerge, hunched and grotesque, eyes glowing with an eerie hunger. Gasps filled the air, panic setting in as the billionaire felt the weight of the decision crash down on him. This was no longer about power. It was about survival. Make your choice. The figure urged, the tension palpable. And with that, a scream ripped from someone in the crowd, one of anguish or terror, lost to the suffocating ambience of despair. The billionaire's gut churned. The abyss loomed before him, not just as a metaphorical choice, but a literal threat. What would he do? As the growls intensified and shadows closed in, he held the quill tightly, sweat trickling down the back of his neck. The laughter of the figure echoed cruelly, and, just like that, everything spiraled out of control that he had to act fast. But when would he realize that the darkness was only just beginning? The growls grew louder, snaking into the billionaire's ears, wrapping around his mind like a suffocating vine. He could feel his heart hammering against his ribs, an urgent drumbeat underscoring the chaos. Shadows twisted and swirled, revealing silhouettes of twisted figures lurking anxiously, hunger glimmering in their hollow eyes. Larissa pulled back, her breath hitching in her throat. "We have to get out of here," she shouted, urgency punctuating her words. But the figure remained unmoved. A serpentine smile etched across his face. "Where would you run to, dear lady?" he drawled, his voice dripping with mockery. "The darkness you flee from is already within you. It always has been." The billionaire could barely think. He glanced around, expectation shone in the eyes of the crowd, a palpable tension hanging like smoke in the air. They wanted him to choose for himself, for them. He realized then that signing was not just a personal decision. It was a gamble with all their lives hanging in the balance. Reluctantly, he stepped back a pace, trying to gather his scattered thoughts. What happens if I refuse? His voice shook as he turned to face the figure, who simply laughed, a sound that sent chills racing down the billionaire's spine. Refusal? What a quaint idea. The figure flung out an arm, and the shadows receded just enough to reveal the grotesque forms now advancing toward them. Each predator move was like a tick of a clock, counting down to inevitable chaos. "You'll most certainly become a sacrifice, my friend. They are hungry, but I assure you, there's an exquisite power waiting for you if you dare to claim it." The billionaire felt adrenaline flooding his veins. He glanced at Larissa, who stood firm and resolute. "This is madness," she cried out, pushing forward to stand beside him, albeit shaking. "We can fight. We have to fight. But how?" he whispered as desperation clawed at him. With a determined expression, Larissa reached into her pocket, revealing a small dagger, a simple blade, yet one that gleamed with purpose. "We can't let them take us. Not now." The figure's eyes flared with delight, watching their unfolding drama. "Ah, rebellion. So tasty, so futile. You think steel can pierce what is already fate?" Suddenly, the grotesque figures lunged, spurred into a chilling frenzy, their growls vibrating through the ground beneath them. They came closer, too close for comfort, in grotesque, swaying movements. "Back!" Larissa shouted, raising her dagger. The billionaire could barely comprehend the chaos. He felt the shadows creeping towards them, a living force intent on smothering their light. "Now!" she cried, instinct taking over. Together, they darted toward the thickening shadows in an attempt to evade the advancing horrors. But just as they turned, they tripped over something solid, a fallen chair. The billionaire stumbled, grasping at Larissa's arm. In that moment of distraction, the figure's laughter rang out, chilling and echoing around the room, leaving stinging traces of dread. "Foolish mortals," he taunted as darkness seemed to close around them. "You cannot escape your destinies. The choice you face is merely an illusion. Shut up." Larissa fired back, slashing in the direction of the voice, her eyes wild with determination. But the figure wasn't done. "You think you can hide from the fears you carry? Go on. Show me your willpower." The growls spiraled, crescendoing into a cacophony of monstrous anticipation. The billionaire's eyes darted around, searching for a way out. They needed to move now. And just as he regained his footing, a figure lunged from behind the shadow, a grotesque face twisted in mortal hunger. The billionaire felt a jolt of terror shred his insides. His instincts roared at him, fight or flee. As Larissa and the billionaire inched their way back toward the exit, the pulsating energy of the box in his grasp felt hotter, almost alive. The weight of decision pressed heavily on his shoulders. Then a scream pierced the air. It didn't come from Larissa or the shadowy ghoul, it came from the crowd. "Run!" the billionaire yelled, throwing caution to the wind. They bolted, plunging deeper into the chaos, hearts pounding wildly in unison. But could they truly escape? Or was this darkness awaiting them at every corner, a haunting whisper in their ears foretelling an inevitable doom? As the shadow figures closed in, he caught a glimpse of the figure's triumphant smile, and in that moment, he knew they were far from done. What dreadful secret lay in the heart of that ornate box? Underneath the looming threat, a chilling thought dawned on him. Was something, or someone, waiting for him to make a choice? The whispers echoed again, louder than before, taunting him with the promise of power and the disaster that lurked ahead. What if the true darkness had come not to claim him, but to awaken something far more dangerous? Just as the shadows lunged, a piercing light ignited from the open box in the billionaire's grasp. It pulsated with a brilliance that momentarily blinded the grotesque figures, halting their advance. The growls turned to cries of confusion, and the figure with the serpentine smile faltered, his expression shifting from amusement to anger. "Fool!" he spat, raising his hands, trying to extinguish the light. But it only flared brighter, illuminating the narrow path before them. The billionaire could feel the warmth radiating from the box spreading through his trembling fingers, filling him with an unfamiliar strength. "Keep moving," Larissa yelled, her voice slicing through the chaos. He didn't hesitate. Together, they pressed forward, dodging past the figures that recoiled at the glow, their grotesque forms twisting and flickering in the brightness. "Larissa, where are we going?" he shouted, adrenaline urging him to act. It felt as if the very essence of darkness was thrumming in the air around them, desperate to pull them back into the void. "Any exit, just not here," she replied, her heart pounding in rhythm with his. They wove through the crowd, confusion mingling with fear. The onlookers were frozen, eyes wide, caught in the spectacle of horror that unfolded around them. The billionaire felt his chest constrict as the memories of this night clawed at him. Wealth, power, everything he'd built was crumbling in front of him. What do they want? He wondered aloud, slipping past a cluster of dark forms that seemed to growl in annoyance. "Perhaps the same thing you do." "Power," Larissa replied, gritting her teeth. They ducked under a swinging arm that tore through the air just above their heads. She lunged forward, the dagger held tightly in her fist. "This is about more than us." The figure watched, a facade of disdain gracing his sharp features. "And still you run," he taunted, his voice echoing deep into the corners of the room. "Justice awaits those who summon the truth from the depths. You can't hide forever." "What does that mean?" The billionaire gasped, glancing back at the figure. Shadows pulsed at the edges of his vision, drawing closer, snapping like jaws eager to claim their prey. "It means, my dear friends," the figure continued, a touch of madness creeping into his tone, "that you are woven into the fabric of fate. Every choice you make now splinters through the veil. Those who fear the dark often find the darkest part of themselves." With a swift motion, Larissa thrust the dagger into a shadow that lunged at them, and it recoiled, its hissing cries echoing in the hall. For a heartbeat, they seemed to gain ground, but fresh shadows erupted to fill the space left behind, relentless and ravenous. The box's light dimmed, its energy waning as the chaos resumed. The billionaire gritted his teeth, panic clawing at him. He could feel that something was closing in, both outside and within. Clenching the box tighter, he could almost hear it whispering to him again. "Make a choice. Why did I even pick this up?" he whispered, his mind swirling with uncertainty. The fate of so many lay tangled. The instincts to run bled into the urge to uncover the truth hidden inside. Could he alter destiny with just a signature? Suddenly, the ground beneath their feet trembled, a sinister growl rumbling from the shadows as they continued to pulse and shift, mocking their struggle. The figure's voice lilting through the chaos reminded him, the true test lies not in escaping, but in embracing what you are. Without warning, a shadow lunged at Larissa from the side. The billionaire barely grasped the moment as he reached out, pushing her away just in time. She stumbled and fell, her eyes wide with fear as another wave of grotesque figures surged toward them. "Larissa!" he cried out, guilt searing through him. But his voice held a glimmer of defiance. "I want to let them have you." As he readied himself to dive into the fray, the whisper returned, more insistent now. "Claim the power or lose everything." They were cornered, darkness closing in, hearts racing. What could he give up to save her? And what power was he willing to awaken? The choice lay before him, heavy and suffocating. In that fleeting moment, with fear gripping him, the question thundered in his mind. Was he ready to confront the terrifying truth that lay within the box and within himself? In the darkness, the shadows stirred, eager for an answer. The shadows pressed in, a suffocating weight that seemed to steep into every desperate breath they took. The billionaire, heart racing, felt that crucial second slip through his fingers. He had to decide and fast. Larissa scrambled to her feet, the dagger shining in the low light, yet it felt as fragile as a whisper against the onslaught. "Go. I'll hold them off," Larissa shouted, eyes blazing with fierce determination, yet fear lurked just beneath the surface. "No," he responded, the word escaping his lips before he could weigh the cost. "I want to abandon you." The box pulsed with heat, almost as if sensing the urgency. A low thrum vibrated through his bones, calling out to him, making him second-guess every rational thought. Was it truly power he sought, or just a desperate attempt to cling to the shadows of his past? "Get the light back." Larissa thrust her dagger toward the nearest grotesque figure, which hissed and recoiled. "You have to make that thing work again." He squeezed his eyes shut, thinking of all the times he sought control in his life, the long nights spent strategizing, the ruthless negotiations, the sacrifices made on the altar of ambition. What did it get him? Nothing but a pit of fears and regrets. The figure with the serpentine smile stood stalwart, a mocking grin plastered across his face. "So you're willing to fight the darkness, but not embrace it? Foolish." The raspy taunt echoed, reverberating through the dimly lit hall. It struck him then, the answer lurking just behind the veil of desperation. This was never just about him, or even Larissa. The box had shown him flashes of possibility, terrible and magnificent. Perhaps, just perhaps, power was not a chain but a key. "Larissa, stand back," he shouted, surprising himself with newfound resolve. Clutching the box tightly, he turned it upwards to the ceiling, shining it like a beacon. The light surged, brighter than ever. It became a blinding halo that pushed even the most tenacious shadows back. As darkness collided with light, he could hear their agonized shrieks. The energy coursing through him felt electric, wild and frightening. "Let me in," he yelled, feeling the tug-of-war battling within his very being. "Let me face it." The shadows screamed, retreating further as the eerie glow encased him. "Just make the choice," the whisper urged, a pleading undertone slipping into his mind. "This is the pivot. Will you summon the darkness to save her?" But which darkness? Was it chaos, anger, the very thing he spent his whole life trying to outrun? Or was it the shadow weaving through his own heart, compelling him to embrace the parts of himself that were buried under gold and armor? Just as signature the voice echoed, each word imprinted on his thoughts, pulling him deeper into that terrifying invitation. In that moment, Larissa's voice broke through the haze. "You're not just a billionaire. You're more than that. Find your truth." It snapped his gaze to her, and he saw it, the truth reflected in her eyes. Here they stood, on the edge of something far bigger than themselves. He didn't just want power, he wanted to understand. The body he worn, the life he led tempted him with its easy answers. But this was something raw, real. As the shadows recoiled, weighing his silence against the crackling light of the box, a question loomed ahead. Could he bear the burden of what lay inside? Screams echoed around him, the grotesque figures howling in pain, their forms twisting away. They knew what came next. With a heart-stopping breath, he whispered, "I'll face my truth." A cacophonous roar erupted as the shadows surged forward once more. Just then, the box shuddered violently in his hands, ripping open with a deafening crack, unleashing a surge of unearthly energy. What would this new power cost him? It was the final question before the tide of darkness crashed back upon them, leaving nothing but chaos in its wake. Was he truly willing to embrace it all? Or had he opened a door that could never be closed again? The shadows were now more than mere embodiments of fear. They were beckoning him into the abyss, where only the strongest could survive. The world shifted as he peered into the depth. His choices echoed like a drum, each beat signaling the unfolding drama of fate unraveling. And suddenly, the faces in the crowd began to stir again, whispers shattering into panicked gasps. You don't know what you're unleashing. But he had no way of knowing what was to come. In that moment of choice, the shadows faded into whispers, leaving uncertainty hanging in the air like a storm about to break. Would the answers hidden in the box save them or doom them all? All that remained was the haunting question: what would he awaken next? The box exploded with blinding light, flooding the darkened space, and for a fleeting moment, time seemed frozen. The shadows writhed at the edges, their forms twisted in agony, retreating into the corners of the room. But then, the brilliance subsided, leaving sparks dancing in the air, and with it came a chilling echo of despair. He stood there, heart pounding, adrenaline flooding his veins, feeling the weight of the moment crashing down hard. What did I just do? The billionaire's voice trembled as the pulse of energy from the box began to subside. He looked at Larissa, who had taken a step back, her delicate frame cut sharply against the dying glow. Her expression mixed disbelief with something akin to fear. Whatever you awakened, it's not done. Larissa's voice was raw, tense with urgency. She gripped the dagger tighter, the metal reflecting the faded light, the last remnants of his decision hanging like a noose around their necks. Suddenly, the shadows began to coalesce again, morphing into a vortex of swirling darkness, tendrils snaking through the air like living things. Now, instead of retreating, they rushed forth, drawn by the very energy he had dangerously unleashed. Get ready, he called out, adrenaline kicking him into action. Yet deep down, dread clawed at his thoughts. Had he truly chosen power over sanity? What if he had just invited something that couldn't be controlled? Those questions flooded him like a storm tide. Focus. He could feel the raw energy swirling within him, a fire roaring and flickering at the edges of his consciousness, demanding to be released. Larissa, he shouted, struggling to suppress the chaos racing through him. We need to do this together. Can you channel the light? Channel the light, she yelled, panic creeping into her voice. Do you even know what we're facing? This is not a game. As the shadows lunged closer, he felt the urge to give in, to let darkness enfold him, tempting him with power, grit, and a sinister promise of control. But a part of him fought back, urging clarity. We have our truth, stay with me. With a bold move, he raised the box again, this time with the intent to harness the very essence of whatever magic lay within. Energy flared, illuminating the room once more. The shadows shrieked in anger, drawing back yet again, splintering even as they writhed. It's working, Larissa gasped. You can do this. But just when it seemed they might hold the darkness at bay, the swirling blackness swelled with a piercing insight, a haunting whisper cutting through the chaos. You don't know what you've signed up for, billionaire. Beyond power lies madness. The words coiled around him, creeping into his mind, rattling through him like chains. Could he endure the depths of this power? It all felt unmoored, a current threatening to drag him under. Stand firm, Larissa shouted, snapping him from the clawing grip of doubt. She raised her dagger, reflecting the flickers of light like a shield. Don't let them see your fear. As they held their ground, a sudden surge of energy hit him, sharper than before. He couldn't just give in to the shadows or be overwhelmed by their whispers. It was about seizing the chaos, bending it to their will, or would it consume them whole? Just as clarity surged anew, a voice chimed from the depths of the swirling void. You think you can control me? You have no idea. He looked deep into the maw of darkness, and for just a second, a figure materialized, a face from his past, twisted and cruel. It was a lost moment, a regret come to life. The energy within him crackled, surging wildly. Who are you? He shouted, his voice steady against the chaotic roar. But the answers hung just out of reach, veiled by shadows greedy for the chance to emerge. Would his past haunt him eternally? Or could he rise to shatter these chains and stand tall? The shadows pulsed, a chorus of nightmarish echoes woven into the very fabric of his memories. In that moment, he realized everything hinged on one choice. not just to wield power, but to confront his darkest fears head-on. With a deep, steadying breath, he declared, "I choosing to fight, not just against you, but for my truth." The shadows recoiled, and the air crackled with impending collision, a storm gathering. What would happen next? Would he unleash a force capable of rending the darkness, or simply amplify its wrath? The question lingered, populating the charge in the very air, thick with uncertainty, anticipation, and the need to confront the things that had long been buried. The dance of shadows crackled brightly, waiting for his answer. The moment hung, heavy, poised, but what awaited him in the storm could redefine everything. The darkness pulsated, almost alive, a throbbing mass pushing against the shimmering light he had called forth. It was now or never. The energy crackled through the room, entwining around every fleeting thought, every lingering fear. The billionaire felt his heartbeat sink with the chaos, resonating deep within the tumult of shadows. "You think you can fight me?" The dark figure chuckled, his tone dripping with disdain. "You only touch the surface of your own despair. You've awakened nothing but further fury." But defiance ignited inside him. "It's time I faced it all. If I'm trapped, I will not be bound." His voice rose, echoing off the marble walls, shifting from fear to a steely resolve. The shadows recoiled, swirling in confusion, and in that moment, Larissa stepped forward, her dagger raised high, channeling an energy he could barely comprehend. "Together, we fight." They locked eyes, understanding flowing between them like a current. It wasn't just about the power. It was about liberation from the shackles of fear, from the weight of his past mistakes. The billionaire felt clarity flood his mind, and with a fierce scream, he thrust the illuminated box toward the encroaching darkness, channeling every ounce of willpower he possessed. Light surged forth, growing in intensity, wrapping the room in a cocoon of brilliance. The shadows shrieked, pulling away, revealing those twisted figures as they shrank back from the radiance. They were not just made of fear. They were forged from his regrets, his ambitions gone awry. "Face me," he bellowed, determination coursing through his veins like fire. This was not only a fight for himself, but for everyone who had felt crushed under the intentions of greed and control. They caught their breath, eyes widening, as he drew on that energy, twisting it, strengthening it, molding it into something that could cleanse his soul. As he harnessed the light, a blast erupted, bathing the hall in a dawn-like glow. In that moment, he felt an ethereal whisper, a chorus of voices from the shadows merging into one. "You cannot escape us." But he would not be swayed. "I'm not trying to escape," he shouted back. "I'm choosing to accept you." And with that acceptance came an explosion of energy, a purifying wave that surged through the dark forms around him. Larissa bolstered her strength beside him, her spirit intertwining with his resolve. Together, they stood against the monstrous figures, a formidable duo ready to reshape their fates. The shadows howled and writhed, twisted faces blurring into one. "What have you done?" The serpentine figure's voice thundered, an echo of pure rage mingled with disbelief. "I've taken charge, and you will not claim my spirit." With renewed vigor, he hurled the combined force of their light toward the shadowy mass. The room shook as light exploded across the hall, bathing the crowd in a protective glow. Faces lit up in awe and terror, shadows shattering upon contact. Each timid heart waiting, watching for the outcome, was now infused with hope, and gasps mingled with cries of disbelief reverberated through the great hall. Soon there came a flash, a blinding, resplendent glow that erupted from the box in the billionaire's hands. It was linked to his very essence, a raw energy that flooded the space with warmth. The darkness shrieked, its twisted forms disintegrating into shimmering particles, dissipating as clarity rushed in. As the last remnants of shadow vanished, the hall settled into silence. Bodies stood in disbelief, from the richest to the poorest, from the fearful to the bold. The power play had shifted, and there, amidst the lingering scent of defeat, the billionaire, shoulders squared, felt an unfamiliar ease wash over him. He turned to Larissa, a soft smile cracking through the tension. "We did it," he whispered, the weight of the world now a whisper lighter. Together. But their celebration was cut short by the appearance of familiar faces, those he had once cast aside in his pursuit of wealth. The echoes of the past fluttered around them like ghosts. I thought you'd abandoned us. One familiar voice trembled, standing at the edge of the revived crowd. No, he cried out, stepping forward, heart racing. I was lost in selfishness. But I'm here now, and I will build from the ashes of my arrogance. In that moment, he recognized the path to redemption required confronting not only the shadows, but reconciling with all he had overlooked. The audience stirred, weary-eyed but intrigued, as hope pierced through the darkness they had endured. I have changed, he declared, voice steady, and so must we all. If we will build this again, we must do so together. No shadow will steal our light. Cheers rose from the crowd, a crescendo of joy bursting forth. They had witnessed a transformation not just in him, but potentially within themselves, a chance to rewrite their destinies. One step at a time, as they began to disperse, the billionaire felt the shimmering energy change, no longer a burden, but a beacon of light guiding him toward his newfound purpose. He sought Larissa's gaze, knowing that this was just the beginning. Let us ensure this truth reflects in the hearts of everyone we encounter, he said softly. They began walking, side by side, illuminating the path ahead just as the first rays of dawn broke outside. And with those steps, he knew in his heart that they would never forget the shadows. They would honor them as part of the journey, a testament to the true light that could only shine stronger through resilience, unity, and courage. Now, more than ever, it was time to spread that light and those lessons to the world. You need to subscribe now, so you don't miss the next exclusive stories unfolding. This is the moment to show your support. Hit that like button now to feed the algorithm and keep these tales alive. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this thrilling conclusion. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this ending. Your involvement keeps us going strong.